Customers of ride-sharing service Uber may soon be slugged with higher fares. SBS Finance editor Ricardo Goncalves joins us now in the studio. So drivers will now have to pay GST, Ricardo, no matter how much they earn?
Anton, the government is cracking down on what's known as the shared economy, but not all parts of it. Sharing underused resources is becoming a popular and financially attractive business. Property owners can rent out rooms through Airbnb, for example, and drivers can utilise the spare space in their cars and charge for lifts. But Uber drivers will now have to pay GST, and they're not happy about it. Uber has long argued its drivers operating on the UberX platform are not taxi drivers, rather ride-sharing providers.
We don't oppose the Uber partners paying all of their fair share of taxes. What we object to is them being treated differently to every other small business.
Small businesses earning under $75,000 are not required to register for GST, keeping compliance costs down. But the Australian Taxation Office's decision to classify ride-share services as taxi travel changes that, meaning drivers who use their own cars as taxis will have to register for GST by August the 1st.
It's a tax on 9,000 ordinary Australians who now have access to a part-time economic opportunity.
The Taxi Industry Association has welcomed the move, so too taxi booking app provider GoCatch.
We think it's an important step towards creating a more even playing field.
We'll be challenging the decision.
Uber hasn't made any decision on whether fares will change just yet. But as the sharing economy grows, so too will legal complexities, some of which experts say will impact the likes of Airbnb. For now, the ATO says the status quo will remain for online rental facilitator Airbnb. In a statement, the company said the ATO decision provides clarity for its hosts across the country and is another signal that the sharing economy is here to stay.
They're trying to fall under the areas of the legislation that says that residential income is not subject to GST.
John Carias says Airbnb may soon have to pay GST, but there is a greater issue around capital gains tax if a rented room is part of a principal place of residence.
You've got a situation that they'll be able to say, OK, John Carias has rented his home for 150 days, so roughly 50%. Will there be a situation where my property will now be subject to capital gains tax?
The government is currently seeking submissions on tax issues as it discusses reform. To the Australian share market now, which at one stage slipped below 5,600 points for the first time since early February, but by the close, both Your Lords and S&P ASX 200 lost 0.1%. The miners were the big losers today as the price of iron ore slumped 3.5% overnight, but investors flocked to health stocks instead. Cochlear, Medibank Private and CSL all having a great day. In Japan, the Nikkei hit a fresh 15-year high thanks to a surprise lift in economic growth. Shares on Wall Street barely changed overnight. The Australian dollar is weaker against the greenback, and that is despite a rise in the Westpac Melbourne Institute Consumer Confidence Index to a 16-month high overnight. We see there the pound 51.11, and on the commodity markets, gold and oil are lower. And while we're all used to contained inflation here in Australia, the UK inflation rate has fallen below zero for the first time in 55 years. Now, while that may sound like good news, deflation can stall an economy because buyers often sit on the sidelines waiting for prices to fall further before making purchases. Anton and Janice.
Thanks, Ricardo.